From the boat. Listen to me carefully, you band of unbelievers. I know exactly where your minds go when they mention the Caribbean of my time. You let yourselves be carried away by those puppet master tales they call Hollywood. Do you see the Black Pearl? That rat's nest of Port Royal, dirty rags with skulls, and those heretic English dogs stuffed with rum.
By God.
What a great lie they've told you. They made you believe that those fools were the masters of the ocean sea. But I swear that's all a rotten lie.
Now listen to this story of a Spanish mulatto. They never asked me for my side of the story. My name is Miguel Enriquez. I was born in San Juan in 1674, illegitimate son of a free mulatto woman and a white man who never showed his face. I was a shoemaker, a coast guard, and in the end, a privateer for the King of Spain. For years, I made the English, French, and Dutch tremble. And I was called the great arch-villain, the King of the Caribbean. They erased me from the books, but not the sea. And today, I will be the one to tell you my own story. As a child, I understood two things: that I had come into the world without an inheritance, and that in the king's lands, if you served well, you could make a place for yourself. My life started in a shoemaker shop, always smelling of leather and glue. There, besides the trade, I learned to read and write. While I sewed boots for others, I read papers, letters, news. I knew that outside the island, wars, crowns, and ports were being decided. And I began to wonder why I had to stay stuck here on land. You don't learn smuggling from books, but from necessity. In Puerto Rico, sometimes the real money came in, other times it didn't. Sometimes there was wheat, and other times only promises. Foreign ships brought what was missing, and many looked the other way because it was either that or the alternative:
hunger.
Meanwhile, I listened, observed, learned names, and counted cannons. And information, my friends, let me tell you, is very well paid. When I first set out to sea, things didn't exactly go well. I almost lost everything right from the start. Funny how things turn out, huh? Later, I became the richest man in the Caribbean. Anyway. But after this beginning, there was someone who saw in me something more than just a cheeky shoemaker. Governor Gabriel Gutierrez de la Riba took me as his trusted man. He knew that I could go where others couldn't and talk to people others didn't even see.
Usaremos mis rutas de contrabando.
Many thought they were using me. In reality, I was learning. In 1701, Europe erupted in war again, but this time it was different. English, French, Dutch, they all wanted a piece of the empire. This was when I stopped being a nobody. They appointed me as the Caribbean Coast Guard, and to make things better, I requested a letter of marque, which was granted to me. That really was incredible. As Coast Guards, at first, we were not much on paper. 2 ships, about 200 men, and orders to watch the coasts. But very soon I realized that if I was going to risk my life, it wouldn't be to appear in a report, but to change the balance of power in prisoners of His Majesty Felipe V. Every foreign brigantine we intercepted, we repaired and renamed. The Maria, the Gloria, the Perla, San Jose. Names that came back again and again because if one fell, the next would inherit the banner. Part of the loot went to pay men and gunpowder, the rest to warehouses, estates, bread, grain. Puerto Rico stopped seeing me as a lucky adventurer and started seeing me for what I really was, the man who filled the gaps that the state couldn't reach. One day, a letter arrived from higher up than any governor, from Felipe V himself. When you come from origins like mine, You never expect the king to know your name, honestly. In 1707, the monarch appointed me captain of sea and war. It was the recognition that my ships defended these coasts better than many official squadrons. Shortly after, I was knighted, and in 1713, the Medal of the Royal Effigy, the king's face on my chest. In San Juan, more than one person clenched their jaw. A mulatto armed with honors that many believed were reserved only for them. Can you imagine this in perfidious Albion? Someone like me with so many honors? Well, although this phrase to refer to them wasn't used until 1793, but what does it matter? It's always a pleasure to say it. With that support, my fleet grew. 30 ships, then more. My ships patrolled from Las Virgenes to Curacao and Jamaica, sometimes even farther north, so far up that the English from New England would see a Spanish flag appear on their horizon that they weren't expecting. And almost always the result was the same. They lost the ship and I gained one. I remember an English captain we captured, pale more from rage than from fear. He spat a phrase at me that would later echo in London.
You are the grand arch-villain of this sea.
They thought they insulted me. Without knowing it, they were writing my title. In 1717, we learned that a group of Englishmen had settled in Enríquez, as if it were no man's land. Big mistake. I deployed my ships and my men, and when it was all over, the English left there defeated and humiliated. And I returned to San Juan welcomed as a hero. You'd think that after Enríquez, everything would be celebration and calm. It was just the opposite. The more my power grew, the more others' fear grew. Governors who once sought me out now distrusted me. Merchants who once applauded me now whispered. I kept capturing enemy ships, funding fortresses, building hospitals, and moving the king's mail between ports. But in San Juan, there were those who couldn't stand a simple truth. The richest and most influential man in all the Caribbean came from Baja Cuna with no known last name. First, they tried to drown me by cutting permits. Some jealous governor thought he could crush me by confiscating my properties. I stood up to them in the courts of the very king I served, and I won. For many, that seemed to confirm that Miguel Enriquez was untouchable. But remember this, nothing and no one in this life is untouchable. If your strength depends only on the fear you cause, sooner or later, someone will find a way to bring you down. The only thing that doesn't fall is what you've truly done and what you can do again, even if they take everything from you. I give you this advice as a gift. In the end, in 1731, a new governor arrived, Matias de Abadia. This time he didn't try to face my cannons. He went straight for my pocket. He opened old files, contracts, permits. What had previously been approved was now being reviewed as if it were a crime. He ordered that supposed back taxes be calculated on catches from 20, 30 years ago. The figures were simply absurd. I remember that meeting with Abadia.
You owe all this amount to the state treasury. Neither you nor anyone else can escape from their mistakes.
Not my entire fleet, nor all my estates together, are worth those columns of ink. This is not justice. It's an execution by paper. In 2 years, I lost everything I had. My own house was left bare, and there were still threats of prison. When my son Vicente died, and I realized that the next step was to lock me away forever, I sought asylum in the convent of Santo Tomas and took refuge there. 8 years. 8 years inside walls that I myself had helped to maintain with my own money when the royal treasury was empty. From there I wrote letters to the king, reminding him of my service, my campaigns, my wounds. The answer I received was disdain. Outside, those who had feared me were dividing up what was left of my empire.
Estúpido. Seamos nosotros quienes disfrutemos ahora.
Inside, only a very few remained by my side. A loyal accountant, some men of the church who did not forget what I had done for the island. They say I died of sudden death in 1743. Others said it was poison. The truth is, when you've seen everything you've built collapse, your heart just doesn't beat the same. What I know is that the day I stopped breathing, many thought they had finally buried my name as well. They were wrong. I was not a pirate. I was not a footnote. I was a privateer for the King of Spain, the son of a woman born a slave who came to command over 300 ships and 1,500 men. I was the man whom they called the great arch-villain in London because they couldn't find any other way to explain how a small port could humiliate a power that believed itself the master of the sea. This was my story, my life, forgotten by many. Until today. Because thanks to Historia Hispana, my name rises again above the waves. And like the old sea wolf that I was, I returned to reclaim my place in the memory of Spain.